We're 11 days away from the elections, and it's time to meet the fifth and final candidate running to be mayor of Richmond. Alexsis Rodgers joins me now to talk about what she would do in office. Ms. Rodgers, thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me, Bill.
It's a pleasure. So tell us, what is this election about?
This election is about making sure that we have a leader here in the city of Richmond that's going to be fighting for working people. And that's what my career has been about, whether it's fighting for healthcare access or access to our democracy. And I'm really excited about the leadership that we'll be able to bring to City Hall.
Well, so tell us, for example, the pandemic, obviously a huge issue for the last 6 months across the country, across the world. How do you judge how Richmond and the administration has handled, say, the medical side, the testing, the availability of PPE?
You know, we have to look at our most vulnerable populations, and we know, unfortunately, because of the state of our federal administration, a lot of our immigrant communities are very fearful of reaching out to public safety officials or government overall. So I've been really concerned that we've not done enough to reach out to immigrant populations in culturally competent ways and in languages that they speak to make sure that they have the testing and the PPE that they need to be safe.
And how about economically? As far as the way businesses have been supported, because obviously the hospitality industry has been decimated. There have been federal funds, but now they're still dithering in Washington about what to do. How do you feel about the way the city has handled the recovery, such as it is, for, say, small businesses?
We have to be really clear in our communication with small businesses, and that's what I've heard the most feedback or criticism of the current administration, that it's been difficult to know what to expect. The phase in and phase out approach wasn't necessarily very clear for business owners. That made it hard to know whether you can keep somebody on payroll or not, and that certainly impacts working people's chances as well.
It's still a tough time, still ongoing. Let's shift gears. We'll try to get as much in as we can here. Protests over police brutality. Obviously, Richmond hit pretty hard in the aftermath of the police killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis on Memorial Day. Do you feel like Richmond has a policing problem, particularly an issue with police brutality, or at least in their interface with certain communities in Richmond?
We do, and what I would elevate is Marcus David Peters was killed 2 years ago. Before that, we've had our own instances of unarmed black men and folks in general being killed or harassed by our police department. So to me, I was really frustrated that after years of the NAACP and other community leaders calling out for real reform, better oversight, that our mayor and members of council haven't taken that issue seriously. And that's what ultimately motivated me to get into the race. And
so the mayor's plan to reimagine public safety, you don't feel it goes far enough, or it's just too little too late?
Too little too late. It's not authentic. If the mayor truly cared about reforming our police department, he wouldn't have waited until weeks before the election to announce a task force that would prepare a report before Election Day. That's just not sincere leadership, in my opinion.
What's the first thing that you would like to see done, for example, in reforming the police department?
I think that we need to make sure that we're only sending police officers into situations they're prepared for. So we need to reduce the scope of their responsibilities. Instead of sending them out to mental health crises or checking on whether a cookout is permitted, let's make sure that they're actually focused on public safety, solving crimes, making sure that Richmond is safe.
All right, and shifting gears yet again, I apologize for the speed with which we're doing this, but Monument Avenue, what is your vision for what Monument Avenue should look like?
I'm really excited that a lot of our Richmond community has already started to reclaim that land and that space to make it welcoming for all Richmonders, because we know that those monuments were erected to send a message that certain people weren't welcome. So I want to make sure that we continue that down that path to make sure that we've got an art community and historians and community members reclaiming that space for all Richmond.
So what would you put art pieces there? Would you put any statuary there at all?
I think that public art could certainly be in Monument Avenue. I don't know that we need to continue to put up monuments for specific people. We know that all of us as humans are flawed. I'm really inspired by the Rumors of War monument, for example, that speaks to an idea or a theme that I think invokes a strong emotion from all of us. And I think that Richmond's creative community can come up with something great for Monument Avenue.
And how about your website talks about housing and to remove the vestiges of redlining, for example, which we see in the heat map, for example, who's getting sick and sickest, especially with COVID. in the little time we have left, just a few seconds, can you outline what your plans would be for housing, affordable housing?
A couple things. We have to make sure we're opening up more inventory for affordable housing. That means rezoning parts of our city, working with city council to do that. We also need to fully fund the eviction diversion program so that if and when it comes to that point, our community has a safety net to rely on. And then finally, we need to make sure that we are re-envisioning public housing overall so that folks who have been in those communities aren't left out and left behind.
And left isolated. Well, Alexsis Rodgers, we thank you so much for your time here on CBS 6 News at 7, but we're going to continue this conversation on Facebook at 7:30 on the CBS 6 Facebook page. We hope you join us there and bring us your questions. Just put them in the comments section there, and we will get Alexsis Rodgers to answer your questions.